Welcome back to Sparks of Joy Studio. In today's video, we will be taking a variety of thrifted finds and turning them into beautiful home decor. I found this terracotta pot holder that was at the thrift store. It actually had the two pots already in it and they were hand painted and gorgeous. I just spray painted the entire piece in black. I left the terracotta pots out and I left them as is because I wanted to do a milk paint technique on here, and I noticed that there was a few kind of little cracks and chips in the paint job that was already done to this piece. To start out, I am using my scale to measure out my milk paint mixture, mainly because when I try to do it just by measuring with the measuring spoon, I never get the consistency that I want. So this method has worked for me very well. I measure each of the portions out for the water and the powder in two separate little cups, and then I bring them together in another cup, pouring the water in first. I make sure it's warm water and I pour it in first, and then I add the powder. This keeps a lot of those clumps and bumps away from the bottom of the mixture. Once that milk paint has set up, I let it sit for about 10 minutes. I come back and I am going to try using a fan brush in today's video to paint on this milk paint onto this piece. I do that because this piece specifically has a lot of little nooks and crannies all over the top and bottom, and I didn't know how else I would be able to get around a lot of those details and get into those cracks like those slats in between the back of those chairs. So this is the method I decided to do. I give it one solid coat, let it dry thoroughly, and then go ahead in with a second coat, both on the top, bottom, and around the sides. After the second coat, I did use my heat gun to dry it and bring out some of that crackle. And now I'm going to use some liquid patina to seal everything in. I just wanted to try something different. I wanted to see how this look would come out, and I actually really liked it. I did water down my liquid patina slightly. This is the dark and decrepit version. And once I had it all laid on, I did come back with a microfiber cloth and wipe back some of the excess. I did use a larger brush for the whole piece, but I do come back with a little artist brush to get into the details that I couldn't reach with the bigger brush. Once everything was dry, I came back with some Spanish moss and added it on top of some floral foam that I had already placed inside those terracotta pots. And then I just grabbed some other floral picks that I had in my stash to embellish this further. I felt that the orange really came out and really contrasted nicely with the details and with the paint that was on the lawn chairs. But also when you see what the terracotta pots, how they're hand painted, you'll see that some of the details within that have that same coloring, which I thought was beautiful. For our next project, we'll be mixing up Mojito, which is a fusion milk paint. And I'm very surprised when I first bring out this powder. It is a very peachy color, but as soon as you mix it, you see that it creates a very similar color to the previous milk paint, which was actually Pantry Door by Sweet Pickins. Here is a beautiful wood platter that I thrifted a few months back, and I am going to be using the Mojito on this piece. I am really looking for a very, very chippy kind of finish on this, so I did not use any sealer. I did not use any extra bond. I really want to see how this paint goes on to this beautiful wooden leaf platter as is. I did two coats of that milk paint, and I did heat gun just a bit on the second time. I didn't want to go too hard because I was worried that everything would chip off. Now I'm coming in with just a piece of sandpaper and wiping back any of the other parts that might chip off. You can see I'm kind of moving in the same motion. I'm not going back and forth in the middle of the bowl. I'm really just looking for that extra chip to come through. Once that's done, I grab some Tung Oil by Sweet Pickins. It does have a little bit of a lemon scent to it, and I am going to cover the entire piece with this tung oil, let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then come back and wipe back any excess. This tung oil is also food safe, so you can put it on projects that you would like to remain food safe. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to end up being a food safe container for me, because now as I look at it, it's something I could see being used almost as like a wall decor piece if you added some transfers. But you let me know. What would you do with this piece? The one thing I am sure of is I am obsessed with that chippy crackled finish. For my last two projects, I will not be using paint, but instead I will be using liquid patina. This first one, which is a knife holder that I found, I thrifted it the other day. It is going to get a coat or a couple coats of the dark and decrepit liquid patina. I really wanted to leave the wood grain as is, but I wanted to make it a little bit darker. I'm not as much of a fan of the lighter wood finish. And I had an idea for this that is similar to something I had seen others do before with, I think, pencil holders, where they turned it into something to hold florals. That's kind of where I was going with this. Now I'll be using these beautiful pink roses. I'm going to be cutting them up a bit just to see how I can place them around that piece and allow it to kind of not be overcrowded. I want it to fit and I want it to be cohesive all around the four sides of this container that I'm working with. I believe this is one of the transfers from the Rose Botanical transfer set by IOD. And I'm going to start by taking that little piece that I cut off the right-hand side of that larger transfer, and I am going to transfer it onto the side of my knife cutter holder, or knife holder, sorry. And I go ahead and lay that transfer sheet down and rub it with the transfer stick. And then once that is done, I do burnish it in with the transfer carrier. I do the same method across all the pieces, and that liquid patina really allows those transfers to go on and adhere very nicely. You will also see as I do the front part of this holder that I was able to get that text that said cuisine art off of that label. It was actually much easier than I expected. I just took some sandpaper and I was able to rub it back. Now I'm going to be transferring on this part of the floral. I do have a little extra that I just allow to wrap around the side of the container. Here is the last little bit of that same transfer. I was able to get it on the other side of my container, and then I do end up going back into the same transfer set to get another floral that was very similar in color and transfer it onto the back of this piece along with some text. Because the text that I had cut from that transfer set was a little bit longer than I needed, I ended up keeping it all together, but just putting the rosa part above the other words that are part of that text. I did allow that R in the word rosa to go right over the transfer with the leaf on it. And that's just letting you know that you can layer your transfers the same way you layer decoupage paper, paint, anything else that we do in crafting. So this was a very easy project, especially because there was no paint involved, just sealing, transferring, and then sealing again. That project was so much fun and it was so easy to do. I wanted to try something similar, but with a different color of liquid patina. I'm going to be using the old and gray liquid patina after sanding back all of this excess paint that I got off of this thrifted wooden breadboard. As you can see, it's kind of rocking back and forth a bit. It is very concave. I didn't notice that when I picked it up, and so it definitely cannot be used functionally in any way. It's going to be more just for decor. I decided on these three roses from the Rose Botanical transfer set. They are absolutely gorgeous, and I also like that there was that text underneath like I had in the previous project. So I'm going to do a very similar method. I'm going to figure out and position these three flowers in a way where they can be layered on top of each other, but if I need to kind of figure out a different angle or if there needs to be something that's cut away, that is absolutely okay to do. I do believe I end up keeping these as is. I just kind of go in a different order than I typically would with a project like this. Typically, I would go ahead and just transfer on that middle part first, but because I want those smaller ones to be behind the larger one, I end up doing those first and being very careful about where I position that floral to make sure that it doesn't end up getting covered up by any of the leaves on the larger one that will be in front. I repeat the same process on the other side with the other small rose, and now I'm going to grab that larger one and position it right in the center where it can be angled in a way to really bring out those two roses behind it without overpowering anything or covering any of the beautiful parts of those transfers. As I look at this piece, I thought it could be a good bookend too. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Here's a look at some of our finished projects all styled together. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again very soon.